Welcome back to Amazin But True, our Mets podcast from the New York Post. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Joining me a bit later in the program, in just a bit, will be New York Mets beat writer for the New York Post. That is Mike Puma. I think it's first time on the show this season. We have not had him on this year, as this is season 4 of Amazin But True, and 2024 will be season 1 of the David Stearns era. It finally is here, as it has reportedly been announced on Tuesday. The Mets are hiring David Stearns as their president of baseball operations. From multiple division titles in Milwaukee, he will come to Queens. His home is New York. He is from the city, Manhattan. And he will come to Queens to try to deliver the Mets their first World Series title in almost 4 decades. 38 years old. It's been talked about for months and months that this guy would come here. And in the last week, it's almost like Steve Cohen was listening to Amazin But True or saw the headlines. Because the other day, our headline was, will David Stearns be the Mets? A day later, he's a Met. So I think it's the Amazin But True effect. Our headline was literally, will David Stearns come to the Mets? 24 hours later, even less, we released the episode, and he becomes the new president of baseball operations for the Mets. So you're welcome. I'll thank us. Obviously, I'm partially kidding here because this has been in the cards for a while, guys. Stearns. When the Mets said in July, and he had that press conference, he said, we need a president of baseball operation. We're going to be looking for one. We're hiring one. He's been on their radar, and rightfully so. This guy became the Brewers GM at just 30 years old. At the time, the youngest GM in the sport. The youngest GM the Mets fired prior, or a high executive role prior to Stearns was Steve Phillips at 34. So, this is going to be interesting because everyone raves about David Stearns, his intelligence, just high baseball IQ. And, his contract was set to expire after the season with the Brewers. He was the GM, but then he shifted to kind of an advisor role. Eppler is going to remain as the GM, which we all know is a mistake. But if Stearns is making most of the decisions, it's fine. He's going to have the final say. And, they'll got to reshape an entire front office. They had the firings of department director, player development, pro scouting. A lot to do. And Buck said he's not worried about his job. It's going to be interesting. Does he bring in Craig Counsell? What does he do at manager? What does he do with the baby Mets, the kids? What does he do with the rotation? What trades will he make? Everyone talks about this guy with only the highest standards. So there's a reason there should be excitement here today in Metsland, because yes, it kind of is a new era right now. It is a new era in Mets baseball. They have an actual high IQ guy in the front office calling the shots, who has a track record. September 2015, he was Brewers GM. 2017, they were 10 games over. Remember, this is the Brewers, mid-market, not a ton of money, in a tough division, a division the Cardinals usually always win. This year, not. It's very competitive. 2018, NLCS, lost in 7 games to the almighty Dodgers. 2019, 89 wins, lost in the wild card game. 2020, lost in the wild card game to the Dodgers. 2021, lost in the NLDS to the Braves, 95 wins. This year, not, in that same role, but helped construct this roster. And they are going to make the playoffs. So he has built a perennial playoff team year after year. Now, you got the richest owner in the sport. So what he did with a team with not all the money in the world and making them a consistent winner is impressive. So you're only thinking he could do that here and maybe better and give this team a championship. His big moves there were trading for Christian Yelich. Great move. Mike Moustakas, Curtis Granderson. Gio Gonzalez when he was good. Willie Adames, who's turned out to be good. Eric Timms, who was a home run machine first couple of years. He signed Lorenzo Cain, Chassin, Bradley. A couple moves did not work out. But I think more moves worked than didn't work. Obviously, the blemish on him is he traded Josh Hader. Now, that trade was probably a mistake. It was strangely timed in the middle of the season, and a team going for the playoffs to trade him. Who knows what was going on behind the scenes there? That was maybe one blemish, and that's a guy who's going to be a free agent. So maybe that's the Mets' blemish, is they're not going to probably get Josh Hader if he's still bitter about that trade. Or the Mets will offer him a ton of money, and he'll say, all right, I'm over it. Let's have a beer, David. And I think it's important and shouldn't be overlooked, his age, because at 38, you relate a lot more to not only, the veterans, but the entire roster. I mean, I don't think that should get overlooked. I know people are going to say that doesn't matter, but I think it is important when you're going into conversations with free agents and GMs. He's a younger guy, and people love him. Everyone raves and respects him. I mean, this guy had a Mets front office role out of college, out of Harvard. He was on the baseball operations department for the Mets in the Arizona Fall League. Then he was in the MLB Central office. Then the Cleveland Indians at the time hired him as the co-director of baseball operations at 26 years old. Then he was hired as the assistant GM for the Astros when they were bad, turned that organization around. And, everyone he's worked with raised him. Jeff Luhnow. There's several people in the organization with GM potential. David's one of them. At that time, the Brewers began searching for a GM, and he became the Brewers GM. And the rest is history. He did really good things with the Brewers, and now he's coming to the Mets. So get hyped. David Stearns is here. He's the first president of baseball operations in the history of the franchise, the highest level executive the Mets have had. Billy Eppler looks like he's sticking around as GM. Buck Showalter's the question. And maybe we'll find out soon after the year. Stearns steps into that office that Monday morning, season ends. We see what he does. I don't think any Met fan will lose sleep if Buck's fired. I don't think most Mets fans will lose sleep if he stays. I think it was a tough bag of goods this year. I think either way, people aren't going to lose their mind. I'm not clamoring for Buck to be fired, but I would be perfectly fine if they went in another direction, especially if you brought Counsell in. If Counsell decides to stay. Now, that's going to be the question. Will Counsell decide to stay? But this is a New Yorker in Stearns. I would assume Jewish. Andrew Hartz, if you want to check his religion, I would assume he's Jewish with the name David Stearns, so fellow Jewish man. But, I'm excited. I think it had to get done. And if this didn't get done, we were in panic mode. Mets fans would be in panic mode because no one else was even discussed. And I think he's far and above, and everyone's saying he's far and above anyone else that was even out there. So it's a new era of Mets baseball. David Stearns will lead the charge, and he'll have a young roster with guys like Ronnie Mauricio, 440-foot laser, his first career home run. I was there on Tuesday night for hockey jersey night. Here it is, and it actually is a pretty damn good fit. Hockey jerseys are built bigger, but it's not as snug as the other ones, so I will definitely wear this. This is a good fall wear in the fall, or you even wear this to a hockey game. Now, it's a little tight up top, of course, but it is a size large, but it's not as snug of a large, which I like. And you got the ties here, so you got the little hockey. Let's talk hockey. They had a Ranger there, a Devil there, an Islander there. So I believe it was Bark in the Park night. So yes, I took a video of this, just the scoreboard. I knew people would love dog content. And it was everyone the Simba cam at Citi Field. I don't think they had ever done that. That was the first time. And they had them with dogs. So dogs were being held up. I know Simba was a cat, but I'm sorry. Dogs are better than cats. Don't at me. It's not even a competition. Just know if you think cats are better than dogs, you likely are a bit crazy. Are they easier to take care? Maybe. Will they claw your face off? Yes. That's a problem. I'm not going to get a dog cat debate here in Amazin But True, but I won't debate this. David Stearns could turn the Mets into a championship contender. And Hart said he can't find if he's definitely Jewish. Yeah, maybe that information not available online. We'll just assume he's Jewish. Shabbat Shalom, David Stearns. L'chaim. We will share some Manischewitz together, Mr. Stearns. We will cut some challah bread with some I can't believe it's not butter on top of it. When spring training comes around, we'll share some matzah. Matzah is not very good without butter. Matzah without butter is very dry. Not very good. I don't think I would be talking about matzah here. But true. But, you know, this is a front office that's had a lot of turnover. From GMs to the recent firings in the front office with, you know, scouting and player development, all the guys that have been let go. A lot of change have been made. There's been a lot of turnover when it came to Zach Scott, Billy Eppler, with Sandy Alderson gone. Like, a lot has changed in this front office. It has not been stable. David Stearns has got to come here and make this a stable position, a stable job, and a perennial championship team year after year. Because the Mets are learning you can't just throw money around and hope that you become a champion. They tried it. It didn't work. They still got to throw money around. Listen, it's going to take money for this team to win. Now, they're trying to do it with prospect, but that's going to take time. And the Mets fans, they're not waiting 3-4 more years for a team to fight for a World Series. You still got to go for it in 2024. And if it's not 2024, 2025, they better be in the World Series. Like, I know it's hard to make the World Series, but Stearns, the hope is he comes here and gets this ship right. And he makes the right moves, not just the expensive ones, but the right ones. And that includes the depth moves. That includes adding a 6-7 starter that could step in and pitch. That includes adding a 25th man, a bench player that comes off the bench if there's an injury and is effective. And I think that's where the Mets have lacked depth-wise, organizational-wise. They haven't had enough. When guys go down, they have been screwed. And they've had the likes of the Vogelbacks, of the Locastros, you know, of the Stewart. Oh, no, not Stewart. Stewart's been fine, but the Arauzes. Like, there hasn't been enough organizational depth. So Stearns has got to come in here and get this right from A to Z, or from A to 3A to 4A to the Mets. From bottom to the top, he's got to get this ship turned in the right direction because it hasn't been there. They're trying with the sell-off. They chose their direction. They got prospects. The prospects look fun. They look good right now. We won't see them in Queens for a while. But Stearns got to come in here and do what he did with Milwaukee and make this consistently a playoff team, but this has got to be a championship team. Now he's got all the money in the world. So the world is his oyster now. And, you know, anyone who gets high-level jobs at that young of an age is well-respected and very smart. Like, people have said, when he walks in the room, he's the smartest baseball guy in the room. And now we get to see it. So, you know, I'm excited to see him stomp into the office and get this thing rolling in Mets baseball. The Mets won Tuesday night. You know, we bring the show a day early because of the Stearns hire that will begin after the season. Eppler stays. We'll see about Buck. I feel like Buck's going to be gone, but we'll see. We don't know the Stearns-Buck relationship, but we will find out early to mid-October probably what that relationship is and if he stays. Good for Ronnie Mauricio finally hitting a homer. Jose Butto, another gem. I mean, Jose Butto against a good Diamondbacks team with a great start on Tuesday night. Ronnie Mauricio, the home run, good sign. We were waiting for it, and it was a long one. And, you know, the exit velocity was pretty damn good on that one. So that was good to see. DJ Stewart hitting, continuing to hit. Good to see. Alonso, another dinger. Good to see. Alvarez, a home run. Good to see. We're seeing the baby Mets in the lineup together, and you're seeing what they could do. Again, you wish this happened earlier, but it's giving us something fun to watch in September for a team that is out of it. So, you know, this when I see 7 through 9, 6, 7, 8, 9 as those baby Mets, I get excited. Get Vogelback at a clog in the lineup. It's good to see. And, you know, first move Eppler should be made is said, hey, Daniel, you're not going to be back. I mean, he's a free agent anyway, but don't even think about signing. And that's it in Mets land. 18 games to go. The Mets are 9 games back. Their elimination of the wild card number is 9, so they aren't mathematically eliminated just yet. To talk about Stearns and everything going on in Mets land, coming up next on Amazin But True, Mike Puma joining us. Stay tuned. All right, we're back. Amazin But True podcast. Jake Brown here, and for the first time in a while, we're here to check back in with Mike Puma, Mets beat writer for the New York Post, New York Post_Mets on Twitter. Puma, welcome back to the show. I have to imagine this has been a rough season. We were talking before, like the team's out of it August 1st, August 2nd, and it's been 2 months of let's try to find a storyline. Well, we got one yesterday. It's been tough, huh?
Yeah, it's been, I've had, now this is my 14th season on the beat with the Mets, and I've had many years where September 1st has rolled around and the team's been out of it, and you're kind of used to covering that last month where there's not much to write about. But this year has been totally different in that, it got to August 1st and they were out of it. And so now you're like, okay, 2 months, how are we going to get through this here? And it's really been a slog here for everybody.
In a season that we thought November 1st they might be in it. We thought they could go maybe on a World Series run, at least when the season started. And then once things materialized, we realized that probably wasn't going to be the case. Well, we're here a day early in the pod because the Mets, the Mets haven't announced, but everyone else has announced that David Stearns will be the new president of baseball operations. He will take over when the season ends. The first president of baseball operations in the history of the franchise. Puma, this is a big deal. Everyone raves about him. How long has this been known? I know people have been talking about this for, I feel like the whole year, saying it's pretty much a lock, but we talked about the other day, he's going to talk to the Astros. He's going to talk to other teams. There may be interest elsewhere, but has this been pretty much a lock for a while that Steve Cohen was giving this guy a blank check and he was going to be the Met with the Mets?
Well, I don't think it got finalized over the weekend, but yeah, I think for a while it was I wouldn't say a lock because something could always happen along the way. But I think Stern's preference was to come back to New York and to try and resurrect his boyhood team, and certainly the money was going to be there. The opportunity to do it with a big market team after all those seasons in Milwaukee. So I wouldn't say it was a lock at any point, but I think it was the wind was blowing in that direction for a while.
Yeah, and after graduating from Harvard, he worked in the Mets baseball operations department. I mean, what a career this guy has had, Puma, like 30 years old to become a GM of the baseball team. I'm here 32 doing a Mets podcast. Like, this guy's 30 as a GM in Major League Baseball. That's a testament to who this guy is, his character, like his, maturity at that age to have that high of a role and do what he did, Puma. Everyone raves about him, but that's got to say a lot for 38 years old now. Even 38 is very young to be the GM of the New York Mets. It's pretty
38,
big.
38 is young. I'm trying to. I don't think the Mets have had anybody that young as a GM before. I'd have to go back and see how old Steve Phillips was or something like that when he got hired as a GM. But
or manager or anything. Like, there's no manager.
Right. Now Luis Rojas got hired as manager. I think he was 38 when he got hired as manager of the team. He was kind of an exception. But you're talking about a smart guy here in David Stearns, a guy who collaborates well. He's highly regarded in the industry. He's done it in one of the smallest markets. Milwaukee made that a perennial playoff team. Not a lot of money to work with there, and now he's going to get Steve Cohen's checkbook behind him.
Yeah, 2018 goes to NLCS, 2019 playoffs, 2020 playoffs, 2021 playoffs. So, yeah, playoff team in a mid-market. You got to imagine the money. Like, I know you can't buy championships, and clearly it didn't work this year with throwing all the money in the world. But if you throw money in the right way, it can work. And I think his brains and what he brings to the table is something this organization desperately needs, Puma, because No offense to Billy Eppler, but he has not been the guy. And I'm curious now what his role will be. Do you think Billy Eppler gets canned, or does he get some other cushy role, or does he stay as GM and Stearns is going to make more of the baseball decisions?
My expectation is that Epler is going to stay as the GM. He'll be there as kind of that support network coming in, because Stearns is coming in obviously from a different organization, doesn't know the nuts and bolts of the Mets, and he's going to have Billy Epler here to lean on and kind of maybe point him in the right direction for that, at least for that first year. And this is kind of the organizational structure I think Steve Cohen has wanted all along, is that multi-layered where you have the GM and then the president of baseball operations above him. And listen, we all know Steve Cohen is going to be the final say on everything, but you'd have to think he's going to listen to David Stearns most of the time.
Stearns has got to make decisions, Puma. I mean, come on. Like, Billy Epler, like, I'm just shocked he's staying in the title. But, like, is it going to be a collaboration, or is Billy going to say whatever David does goes? Because I trust David's track record a little bit more. He's had a perennial winner with the Brewers, where Billy Epler was the Angels, nothing. Mets, besides last year, has not done much. I feel like Stearns should be calling all the shots, and Billy says, yeah, I'm good with him.
Yeah, well, Stearns is going to be the final word. Epler will give his opinion. Stearns will probably get opinions from other people in the organization. Will put it all together and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. That's kind of how it works. Not just in baseball, but everywhere.
Steve Phillips, by the way, was 34 when he was named the
Okay,
Mets GM.
there you go.
So there we go. There's a younger one. That's surprising, but listen, I guess if you start right after college and get going, you get a decade under your belt. I guess that makes sense. Is this like the monumental move that we're talking about here? Jeff Passan was tweeting how it's a new era of Mets baseball, and it is. And do you think it is a monster deal for the franchise, or do you think they just filled a void that they didn't have? Like, is this a monster deal for them?
I don't know, monster's the right word. It's a big deal, though. You get a guy like Stearns. They're not, there's very few of these kind of guys, and even fewer that were available this coming to this off season. You look like at a guy like Andrew Friedman, who's so highly regarded, and some of the other names that were out there, like John Daniels certainly tailed off in his success at the end of his Texas run, but went down to Tampa Bay and was a consultant, was maybe a guy's name you heard floating around a little bit. But there's not a lot of these top tier guys, and to be able to get one, it's a big deal.
When a new president, someone of a big role comes in, Puma, I think of, the Vince McMahon clip, the gif where he's like strutting and he's doing the Conor McGregor strut walking into the office. Well, at some point, he's going to walk right into either his office, his home, wherever it is, Buck Showalter's office. What do you think Stearns means for Buck? Because in my opinion, I think if they're going with a younger team and a team that might not be a championship caliber team, I don't think it makes a ton of sense to have Buck back. I think it makes sense to bring someone like the rumors have been. All right, let's bring my guy, Craig Counsell, bring him along with me. Do you think he comes in and brings in a new manager?
That's interesting that you say that, because when I think of Buck, I think of a player development guy. This is a guy who helped build those Yankees teams in the '90s. Went to Arizona, started from scratch. I think after last year, the kind of the reputation of Buck kind of changed as, oh, this is the guy you bring in when you're ready to win. But when I look at Buck, I look at his success as a manager. Even Texas, Baltimore was building up teams. He's a player development guy. Now, that said, I don't know that he's going to stay here. That's more interesting. Certainly Epler. I think Epler's going to stay. I can't say that's going to be the case with Buck Showalter. He's got 1 year left on the contract. He's got, I think he's got Steve Cohen in his corner. Now, you bring in David Stearns. Do you say to Stearns, hey, do you want to ride out one more? Are you okay riding out one more year with Showalter on his contract? Or is Stearns that resolute that he needs a new manager right off the bat that you make a change? So this is one that could go either way.
You look at Council as an upgrade over Buck Showalter right now?
Um, Not necessarily. I mean, Council is in a good situation in Milwaukee. Now, I don't know that Council wants to manage after this year. I've heard he might want to take a year or two off to spend time with his family, and he's certainly a guy who doesn't have to keep going. Whereas a lot of guys that you have to keep going. If you get out, you're not getting back in. But Craig Council's got kind of the track record where if he takes a year or two off, there's going to be managing opportunity. On the other hand, if he has an opportunity to, maybe he wants to manage in a big market. Maybe he wants to manage the New York Mets, and this will be the only chance he gets to manage the Mets. So um, I don't look at him as a certain upgrade over Buck Showalter. Maybe he is, but I think this is. I don't know that he wants to manage after this season. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued because, I kind of like Buck, but I also think they should move on. I thought this year was an absolute disaster. I did not think the clubhouse got along. I think there just needs to be a shakeup, and I don't know if he was the guy to, run through all. When he came here, I was, jumping around like crazy. I mean, I thought it was an incredible move,
Yeah.
but I just don't know about the future. What do you think it means for the rest of the front office here, Puma? Because we haven't really talked about it on the show here because, no one really knows who they are. But there was a shakeup, a few weeks ago where, they fired Director of Player Development Kevin Howard, the Director of Pro Player Evaluation Jeff Lebo, and Jim Cavallini, Director of Performance. Other high-ranking officials and analysts were fired too. Like, what's going on here? Are they going to have? Is there going to be more of a shakeup here with
Well,
Stearns, like in roles that people may not hear about?
I mean, some of this is normal turnover. You have this every September, and we were just in Washington last week, and they fired a bunch of front office people down there, and I think the expectation is that Rizzo's staying as the GM, but there's just normal turnover that happens. That said, maybe at that point, um, Steve Cohen had a good idea that David Stearns was coming and said, okay, let's just clear it out ahead of him and let him bring in his own people. So, now it'll be interesting to see, does Stearns bring in mostly Brewers people like now, like you mentioned, Craig Counsell with the managerial, or does he have, does he branch out here and look around? And, a guy like Stearns, you have to think he knows a lot of people, and he's going to know uh, the best people available to fill these positions.
As a guy who's there all the time, are you confident with the future of this franchise? Now Stearns here. They have their president, but a long off season ahead, Puma. You got to build at least 3/5 of a starting rotation
Yeah,
and then depth, and then you got to figure out what do you want to do with the baby Mets. And I think they kind of mismanaged that with Mauricio, with Vientos barely playing when he got called up. Um, are you confident in the future here? Billy Eppler's talked about the forecast, like it's Al Roker and a weather report for 2024. But are you confident as someone who's there
I'm
watching?
fairly confident that it's headed in the right direction. Now, does that mean they win next year? Not necessarily, but maybe if you're talking about 25, 26, 27, I'm fairly confident that they're on a good path that way. Just you look at some of these kids they brought back in the trades, and there's a lot of optimism about these guys. There's optimism about a guy like Ronnie Mauricio. I don't know what the optimism level is on Vientos and Brett Beatty right now. We've certainly seen a good amount of them here, and that's going to be one of the big issues moving forward. Is kind of what they do with third base. I think not just next year, but for the future. But taken as a whole, yeah, I think this thing's heading in the right direction.
Mike Rizzo, by the way, just got today, this morning, it was announced a multi-year extension with the Nationals. So Mike Rizzo will be back as Nationals GM on a multi-year deal. Yeah, I think Mauricio, he had his first homer finally. I was waiting for that. It was a freaking laser, 440 feet. Talk about a great time to hit your first homer up into the Coke corner. Might have hit a dog. I mean, it was Bark in the Park night. And there were dogs everywhere at Citi Field, so a dog might have caught one. It's like Air Bud, great movie, except with baseball edition. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I gotta see what Stearns comes in here and does, but I don't think you should be. I think you should be going for a championship next year. Now they say projections will be different, as in they're not gonna be a 9,500 win team. That's fine, but you gotta fight for the playoffs. And Beatty, I'm confused about. I don't think you could go into next year as a lock as he's your third baseman. I don't think Puma, he's shown enough. Ronnie, the way he's hitting right now, is going to be fighting for a starting spot. I'm not saying he's going to get it, but he's going to go into spring training with a shot to maybe be the second baseman if you move McNeil to left. McNeil's a trade piece. Pete Alonso's been talked about as a trade piece. What do you think of the whole Pete Alonso saga? Do you think the Mets should hear at least what they can get, or do you think they lock him up for an
I mean,
extension?
I guess it doesn't hurt to hear what you can get, but I just wonder where are you going to get your home run? Pete Alonso got 44 home runs this year. Where are you going to get that kind of power? I don't know. You know, now if you're talking about not competing until maybe 2026, I guess you can trade Pete Alonso. If you want to be, you know, in the mix, and I think that's the plan to be in the mix at least in 24 and 25. You've got to keep this guy, and yeah, I'm kind of confused by a lot of the Pete Alonso trade talk. I understand that he'll bring back some prospects, but uh, you're that it's going to be a hard sell on Mets fans if you make that deal.
Yeah, I mean, it will be, I've already heard people tweet, I'm giving up my fanhood. I'm giving up my season tickets, which
Well, people say that about everything, but
always, yeah. I think it's smart to give your season tickets. I think it's a dumb investment because, you end up losing all the money in your tickets and selling them for $1 or handing them out to people on the streets by the time September comes around like this year. I mean, people have lost so much money trying to get rid of tickets this year. So I'm sorry to the ticket office. That's probably a bad sell. I mean, but that is the case. Well, Mike Puma, been a rough year, huh? Like, yeah, I think you're ready to be in Cancun or on a beach somewhere on a tropical island because you thought you'd be working through October, and here you are, October 2nd. You'll be out the door.
be out the door. Well, and then the real season begins, right? In October, not so much October, but November and December is when it gets interesting.
Well, it's going to be a busy offseason. I mean, they have a lot to do with this roster. Hader's been talked about, guy Brewers, but now Stearns here, he might not like Hader after trading him. I mean,
Well,
God,
that's the biggest blemish on Stearns' track record was that trade, Josh Hader to the Padres. So,
but if he could find a way to get that relationship back, if you have Hader and Diaz at the back end of the bullpen, oh my,
that would be something. That
that
would
would
be
be
something.
something with no WBC next year. Thank God. It would be something. Mike Puma, NY Post _ Mets. Read his coverage in the New York Post and NYPost.com. Puma, good to catch up with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right, Jake. See you.
Alrighty. Good to chat once again with Mike Puma for the first time this season and talk about the 66 and 78 New York Mets and the future of the team with Mr. David Stearns. As that closes up shop here on episode 180 of Amazin But True, New York Mets podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to Andrew Hartsfeld, me on producing the show as usual. Subscribe to Amazin But True on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast. Watch us on the New York Post Sports YouTube page. You can see what this hockey jersey looks like. Give us a thumbs up below. Comment. I want to know from you, Mets fans, what do you think of the Stearns move? Are you excited? Are we overrating it? Is it not that big of a deal? I think it's big just because they've never had a guy in this position. So I think it's a strong sign that they have someone in a position that is normal. It's a normal thing for teams to have a president of baseball operations. And to have one of this realm that is so well regarded, I think is great for the franchise when they've had guys who aren't. Eppler is not well regarded. He sucks. I'm sorry. He hasn't been, for the most part, has not been a great GM. Doesn't have a great track record. Did nothing when the Angels made the playoffs once. You could argue he did a great job getting those prospects, and that's fine. I don't disagree. and they were good last year. But the overall track record has not been great. So now you have someone above him that will call the shots. It will be a collaborative effort, and that's fine. Because Stearns, I think, will have the final word. If Eppler says something, Stearns says, no, we're not going to do that. They're going to say, all right, David, you're the man. You're the man, you're the man, you're the man. You can tell everybody. Stearns, this is your song. Why every show am I trying to do a parody song? I don't know. I'm like Weird Al Jakovich here on Amazin But True. Think we'll be back on Monday. We'll be back after the Mets series against the Reds. Bartolo Colon Day on Sunday. I can't believe I just said Weird Al Jakovich. It actually has a nice little ring to it. Jakovich. It's only a letter off. Bartolo Colon Day, the long sleeve shirt. I don't think I'm going to go because I got to be locked into football. Maybe I'll go get the shirt, stay for a bit, and come back and make it for Jets and Giants games at 4. I hate when they're both at the same time. If someone has got to do pods for both, it's tough. I don't have the second TV set up, so I'm going to have to get the laptops going and figure out how I got to stream all these games. I need a 3 TV living room. I need that life where you got like 8 TVs. But we'll be back on Monday. Listen, if the Mets win Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, let's see, folks. Let's see where they're at in the standings. Arizona's that team in the 3rd wild card spot. Cincinnati a game out, so they would gain ground on both of them. I'm just trying to keep some glimmer of hope. See if by Monday they're 5 out. 5 out with 18, 17, 16, 15, 13 to go. Could be the greatest comeback in Mets history. Enjoy the rest of the series against the D-backs, folks. Enjoy the series against the Reds. We'll see you at Citi Field, and we will talk to you next time right here on Amazin But True.